We are all that I am, a study in being part of God. In the teachings of one of the great Kabbalists of the 1500s, called Isaac Luria, also known as the Ari, the lion, he had an idea about creation in the beginning. And one of these ideas was called Tzimtzum, which was about how everything came into being through contraction. Before it all began, there was Ayin. Ayin, no thing. No thing. Nothingness. No thingness. Ayin is soundless, but neither is it silence, nor is Ayin a void. And yet, out of the zero of Ayin's no thingness comes a one of Ein Sof. Ein Sof in Hebrew means limitless. The absolute nothing of Ayin begats the limitlessness of Ein Sof. Tradition, according to Isaac Luria, states God wanted to know God, and God had no way of knowing God. And so we see how from nothingness the infinite all created a space to create creation. In this space was manifested the first Sephirot of creation. This was done from the emanation of Ein Sof Or, the endless light. And so the endless light shone and created the first Sephirot, Keter. Then the second and the third Sephirot were manifested from the first. We can see that as the first one creates the second and the third has the second and the first within it. Of course, the first manifested the second and the third. Second and the third part of the beginning, all part of the one. And so each Sephirot in the beginning was created, one from the one before, And so was created the tree of life, as we call it, Etz Chaim, which here we see it as four worlds. Lots of names, lots of attributes. These are the four worlds. Divine world we call Atzilut. The world of creation we call Bria. The world of formation we call Yetzirah. And the world that we live in, the material world, Asiya. Normally, when we look at the tree of life, we see only 10 Sephirot. And this is a separation of the four worlds as we look at them. This is at the top of the tree. This is Atzilut, the first created world. The names on the tree are given as divine being attributes. Next is the world of creation, Bria, where the archangels reside. It's interesting as we look at the tree like this, because each of the four worlds overlaps the other one. So the top of the second tree, which is Berea, overlaps the middle, if you like, of the first tree, the Divine World tree. It's the same with the next tree down, the tree of formation, Yetzirah, and yet again with the tree at the bottom of the tree where we live, the physical world, if you like. The top of that tree is also the middle of the tree before, where Archangel Sandalphon resides. He doesn't reside like we reside, of course. It's the area of vibration, if you like. We could call it a dimension, just as we as human beings in the physical reside mainly in the third dimension. So let's just quickly recap. In the beginning was the nothingness. The nothingness created space within itself to know itself, to create creation. In that space, it sent down light, and in that light it formed the Sephirot, from which everything exists, including what we call the attributes of God. And now for something completely different. The atom. So we all know what an atom is, basically. We haven't got a clue really, but scientifically we have understanding. Wikipedia states, in simple terms, an atom is a cloud of tiny electrons buzzing round a central, much larger nucleus in a series of orbits called shells. The innermost shell can hold 2 electrons. The next one can have up to 8, and so on. The nucleus is made up of positively charged protons and uncharged neutrons. The electrons are negatively charged, and there's 1 electron per proton to maintain electrical neutrality. What we know about the atom is atoms are made of very small stuff. They're the building blocks of all in physicality that we're aware of. Everything's built from atoms, everything physical that you can touch or feel or see. Atoms are mostly empty space. If we look at an atom and we see the electrons going around the central core, in the middle there's just a lot of empty space. In fact, atoms are mostly empty space. I even read that an atom is more than 99% empty space, and the protons and neutrons make up a very small amount of the volume of an atom, and additionally the electrons are much smaller in proportion to the neutrons. So, what's this got to do with anything, you're probably saying? So one day, many years ago, I'd been studying Kabbalah for some time, although I'm not an expert. And there are those that will probably look at what I've said up to now and say, oh, that's all wrong, and I appreciate that. I'm just giving a very simplified view to express what I thought. And then one day I was sitting contemplating my navel, as we say, and the creation of all things, as expounded by that great Kabbalist Isaac Luria, the Ari. And I suddenly realised that what he talked about in Tzimtzum, where God created this empty space from which everything is created into, and thought about the atom, made me realise that that empty space within the atom is the same empty space that everything was created in. Just think about it for a minute. We always say things like, we are all part of God. God is in everything. And yes, what does it mean? We have our understanding of it. If we go back to that initial drawing with that empty space in the middle of everything that was created for God to create everything in, it's just what is inside an atom. So God is in everything. We are God because we are made up. Besides the physical bits, most of those physical bits are 99% empty space. So, have a think about it. Does this resonate with you? We are all part of God. It's so apparent today that we're all part of the one, and that we are made in God's image.